September 18, 2025. An historic day in American law. The Supreme Court has overturned key Trump-era tariffs, reshaping the balance of power in government. This isn't just about trade, it's about who controls the nation's economic future. The case challenged the president's use of national security laws to impose sweeping tariffs, actions that sparked years of legal battles. Importers argued the executive branch overstepped, claiming only Congress can tax and regulate commerce. The Supreme Court's decision signals a new era, directly confronting the limits of presidential economic authority. Legal experts, economists, and world leaders have watched closely, knowing the verdict will echo for decades. This is about the structure of American democracy and the separation of powers. The ruling re-examines presidential power during emergencies, forcing a national conversation about the roles of Congress and the president. The decision impacts the Treasury, consumer prices, and business strategies nationwide. It reasserts checks and balances. No branch holds absolute power. The implications are vast and will unfold for years. How will this affect America's global economic relationships? The Supreme Court has drawn a line in the sand. This is a pivotal chapter in the debate over presidential authority. The decision will shape American economic statecraft and its global standing for years to come. The legal battle began with President Trump's aggressive use of executive power over trade. Trump made tariffs his primary tool, targeting both allies and adversaries, arguing swift action was needed to protect American workers. He invoked national security laws like Section 232 and IEEPA to justify sweeping tariffs, a sharp break from past administrations. Lawsuits quickly followed, with businesses arguing these moves misused emergency powers meant for real crises. Legal experts warned this could upset the Constitution's balance, sidelining Congress from its core role over commerce. The core issue: can a president declare an economic emergency and act alone? This push for executive power set the stage for a constitutional showdown. The Supreme Court cases weren't just about tariffs, they were about defining the limits of presidential economic control. The outcome would shape the future of American governance. The Supreme Court faced a fundamental question: can a president use emergency powers to impose tariffs without Congress? The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to tax and regulate commerce. Plaintiffs argued Trump's tariffs infringed on this core authority. The administration claimed Congress had delegated this power through laws like IEEPA. The legal fight centered on whether IEEPA was an open-ended grant or had limits. Critics warned that unchecked executive power could let presidents bypass Congress on major economic decisions. The case forced the justices to clarify the boundaries of presidential authority. The ruling would set a precedent for future economic statecraft. A win for the president could expand executive power. A loss would reinforce Congress's constitutional role. The stakes, the very structure of American government. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled the executive branch exceeded its authority. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that while Congress granted emergency powers, they are not unlimited. The court found that broad, indefinite tariffs went beyond IEEPA's intent and undermined Congress's constitutional role. The majority drew a line: targeted sanctions may be valid, but sweeping tariffs are Congress's domain. Allowing the president to use IEEPA this way would create a parallel system of taxation, violating the separation of powers. The dissent, led by Justice Alito, argued the court was overstepping, and that IEEPA gives the president wide discretion. They warned the ruling could limit future presidents' ability to respond to global threats. Ultimately, the verdict reasserts checks and balances. The president retains emergency economic powers, but only within constitutional limits. Major shifts in economic policy now require Congress. The ruling reinforces that the power of the purse and commerce regulation remain with the legislative branch. The Constitution's framers intended no less. The Supreme Court's decision triggered immediate financial consequences. Billions paid in tariffs may now be refunded, posing a logistical and fiscal challenge for the Treasury. Identifying eligible companies and calculating refunds will take years and may spark more litigation. Markets reacted swiftly. Stocks of tariff-burdened companies surged on news of potential refunds and lower import costs. However, businesses must now readjust strategies as the trade landscape shifts again. The payout of refunds could impact the federal budget, requiring spending or borrowing adjustments. Economists expect the removal of tariffs to eventually lower prices, but the effect will be gradual. The decision creates a period of transition and recalibration for the U.S. economy. Some sectors will benefit immediately, but the overall environment is one of uncertainty. The government must unwind a major policy while businesses adapt to new realities. The financial fallout is complex, reshaping strategies and government finances. This is not just about returning money, it's a major economic event. The ruling sets the stage for a new chapter in U.S. trade relations. For consumers, the ruling should eventually mean lower prices on imported goods, but not overnight. Supply chains need time to adjust, so savings may take months to reach store shelves. For businesses, the impact is immediate. Many will receive substantial refunds and see lower import costs, boosting competitiveness. Small and medium-sized firms, hit hardest by tariffs, gain breathing room and predictability. Yet, uncertainty remains. Trade tensions with China persist, and new barriers could emerge through legislation or other tools. Companies can't return to the pre-tariff status quo. They must stay adaptable. The ruling alters the strategic landscape for international trade. In the long run, it may foster stability, as major policy shifts now require congressional consensus. For now, businesses face a period of uncertainty as they await the government's next moves. This decision redefines presidential power for generations. The ruling restores balance between the executive and legislative branches in economic policy. For decades, emergency declarations shifted authority toward the presidency. Today, that trend is checked. Future presidents will face greater constraints using emergency powers for broad economic actions. Major trade policies will now require congressional debate and approval. This strengthens Congress's hand and makes economic laws more durable. Some argue this slows crisis response. Others see it as a win for democracy. The era of sweeping, unilateral trade actions is over. The ruling sets a new legal precedent for all future administrations. America's system is recalibrated. Power is more balanced, as the framers intended. The Supreme Court's decision will have lasting effects on U.S. economic policy. The executive branch's toolkit for economic statecraft is now more limited. Large-scale tariffs require Congress. Expect a shift toward negotiated trade agreements and targeted sanctions with clearer legal foundations. The era of emergency powers as a primary trade tool is over. The ruling brings stability and predictability, helping businesses and investors plan for the long term. Congressional committees overseeing trade and finance will gain influence, requiring more bipartisan review. While policymaking may slow, decisions will be more carefully considered. The ruling strengthens America's legal and financial frameworks, crucial in global competition. It limits unilateral presidential action, but boosts legitimacy and stability. This is about structuring U.S. economic statecraft for 21st century challenges, effective and grounded in law. In this landmark case, the Supreme Court reaffirmed its role as guardian of the Constitution and the separation of powers. By curbing executive authority, the court sent a message of stability to allies and trading partners. U.S. policy is now more predictable and grounded in law. This could rebuild trust and make America a more reliable partner in global trade. However, some worry the ruling slows U.S. response to economic threats, potentially putting it at a disadvantage. The world will watch to see if this emphasis on process hinders America's agility. The decision curtails executive power, empowers Congress, and sets a new course for U.S. trade policy. It brings clarity and stability, but also new questions about America's ability to act decisively. As the dust settles, one question remains. Will this reassertion of constitutional process strengthen America's global position or constrain it in a competitive world?